Welcome to this guide on EU4's governing capacity mechanics. Governing capacity in EU4 is supposed to represent your country's ability to manage everything and administer it and not overextend your bureaucracy. In-game, it's represented by, like, if we click on this province here, by your province's development. So this province is worth 5 development. And every point of development costs you 1 point of your governing capacity. So if your entire nation was worth 1,000 development, it would cost you 1,000 governing capacity. And if we click on our shield up here, we clicked on stability and expansion here, we would get to governing capacity. And as you can see, we're paying 1,544 of our total 2,337 governing capacity. Now the thing is, if we looked over at our total development, you can see we've got 2,404 of them. So the reason that it's less is what we're going to go over now, and I'll show you how to not only increase this governing capacity number, but also how to lower the overall impact it's causing. Because technically, I should be paying, from what I was just telling you, I should be paying, if I can click on the right button, 2,400 governing capacity right now. And if I didn't have any modifiers, I would be paying 2,400. So how it works is, if we click on Herat right here, which is a 66 development province. It's a really high development province. If we click on the actual state, we can see the entire state is made up of three provinces. Herat being 66 development costs us 66 of our governing capacity. Now if we actually click on the state though, like I was just saying, we can go over this governing capacity button and we can see that Herat actually only costs us 6.6. And you can see the other members of this state, like Sarax here costs 9, Gurion costs 10. It's 10 development, so together this should cost us a lot, but to total it's only costing us 13.5. So the reason behind this is, and if you go over it, you can see that everything here is costing us a lot less. Like Gurahan there is costing us 40% less. And the other two are both costing us 90% less. So if you go off of this screen and go back over to the province, if we clicked on like Gurahan for instance, if we look at their buildings, we will see that this one has nothing that helps us, which is why they're only getting 40%, which you'll see that in a moment. If we go to this one, we can see that this one's got a town hall, which gives it 50% off. So if we click on somebody, let's find somebody with a, well, opening building slot. Here we go. If you look at your buildings, the government tab is where you can lower this. So if you build a courthouse, you can see on the bottom it says province governing cost 25% off, or town hall later in the game 50% off. So these two are your easiest way to lower the cost that you're having to pay. So just offhand, this one costs us 50% less. So normally, this Quarshi, I'm sorry when I'm slaughtering these these country names, but I'm bad at pronouncing them. But if you look at this 9 that it costs you, it should cost us 9 governing capacity. But if we actually look on here, it costs us 9 as it says, but if we actually look, it's costing us 4.5 because we're getting 50% off from our town hall. Now the reason that we're to Herat over here, though, we were paying 90% off for some reason. The reason behind that is that Herat here has a state house. Not only does it have a town hall for 50% off, it has a state house manufactory for 40% off. So if we clicked on here real quick, so not only are these two government buildings we were talking about, down here the manufactory is the state house, which is the 4th option, can give you up to 40% off. And I say that because if we clicked on, let's say this one here, and we were going to build a state house, as you can see it says statewide governing cost 20% off only, not 40%. And the reason Herat's getting 40%, if we go over it, and you can go over it anywhere, it says will be more effective on provinces with paper, glass, or gems. So if the province, and if you look in the corner of any province, you can see this one's producing paper, producing wool, and so on. Like this one, wool, it's not one of those 3 things, you only get 20% off. Arat, because it's producing paper, you got 40% off. So this is most effective in provinces where you have paper, glass, or gems because you get that extra 20%, which is really nice. So that the State House plus the Town Hall is giving us 90% off. Because while the courthouse or town hall only affect the province, the State House affects the entire state. And you cannot stack it. So I could not go over here and build another State House because we already have one in this state. So that there is probably the easiest way to lower the impact of the development and make it so your governing capacity goes farther. The other thing to consider is if we go down here, Delhi is our capital province, as you can see here. Now, if we click on the state for Delhi and we go over here, you can see that all of the governing capacity, instead of Delhi costing us 45, which is a lot, Delhi's literally costing us half a point, 0.45. And the reason behind that is your capital, wherever your capital is, the entire state gets 100% off on governing capacity costs. Now the game has a 1% minimum, so they have to pay 1%, which is why all these three are paying 99% less than normal, which is why it's super cheap. So in your home game, developing the provinces in your state that has your capital is very efficient because I can develop all these up to 100 and pay almost nothing. If I developed all three of these provinces to 100, it would only cost you 3 governing capacity. So that's a way to develop very cheaply and not spend much governing capacity. So that's just something to keep in mind. But pretty much those buildings are the way to go with that. The third thing to point out is if we go over here, which province was this? One second. Let's see here. I believe it's this one. Yes. So this province here currently is a state, but we have not cored the provinces. So what happens is if you if you take new territory, normally you click this button and instead of it being a territory, you make it into a state. Because if something's a territory, you get overextension, it's a huge problem. So normally, you're going to state stuff. Now the thing is, you can also core it. The reason this is important is right now, as you can see, we got 3, 4, 6. If we go over this, instead of paying 3, 4, 6, we're only paying 1, 1.5, and 0.75. And the reason behind this is as long as something is a state, but it's not been cored, then you get 75% off. You don't get a lot of the benefits. For instance, your autonomy can't be lower than 50%, for instance. So it's not the best to leave it that way, but you can temporarily, or you can do it a long time if it's a worthless province. So as you can see, if we go over this, it's a territorial core right now, because we haven't actually pressed this button to core it a second time. If you guys are used to doing that, if you click on it, normally you core it, and then you core it again, you turn it into a state, and then you core it again. So if you don't core it the second time, you get 75% off. Hopefully that made sense. As long as it's a territorial core, it's 75% less than normal. So if we cored all these right now, bam, and then we'll let the month go by. Pause. And we can see now we're paying 13 governing capacity because these provinces here don't have any buildings, so we're paying full. Everything costs its development. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a way to make things cheaper. You can always unstate and then restate something, which I'll just show you so you can see it. If we unstate it right now, then make it into a state, but it's still, if you remember, we haven't recorded it. Or look, now we're down to 3.25, so we got a discount. So you could always do that because stating and unstating don't really cost you anything. The downside is now I have to spend 13 admin power again if I want to make it into a province core. So it's just something to do, though. You could do that in order to lower your governing capacity impact on a bunch of states that are maybe not worthwhile or not providing a lot, and it would save you some governing capacity. Now we'll go over things that will increase this number. Like right now we're at 2300, and you can see all the flat modifiers there. Most of those come from all kinds of different things. So tech is one of the ones you get automatically without really having to do anything. If you go to your tech screen and go over this button down here, you can see when you will gain more governing capacity. So if you know you need some more, you can go over here and go, oh, okay, like right now, I'm at tech level 23. I could go here and see that, oh, at tech level 24, I'll get 250 more. Or at 27, I'll get 250 more. You can see how close you are to your next boost to that. So if you're planning to go conquering and you're close, you can see, oh, am I going to have more soon or not? Something that everybody gets too, if you go over this real quick, you can see base value of 200. Everybody in the game gets that 200. And then technology goes up over time. And at the end of the game, you have around, I think it's 1700 from technology that you'll get total. The next one is government rank, if you look on there. And that's just what rank your government is. So if you're an empire, you get 400. If you're a kingdom, you get plus 200. And if you're a duchy, you don't get anything from that. And over time, as you get more development, you can click this button and increase your government rank. So you just want to keep an eye on this button right here if you start the game as, say, a duchy, so you can increase it. Because it's really important, and it's an easy way to get more governing capacity. And if you're taking on more development, that means you're going to be able to press this button, because this button is based on your development. Let's see. The next one here is the government reforms. Lots of countries have special ones, and we'll go over some of those later on near the end of the video. But most countries have generic ones. Like for instance, I have a pretty generic tree here. If we go over here to tier 6, you can see I've got plus 250 governing capacity. So if I chose this over this one when I was at tier 6, I'd get a plus 250, which I did. And a lot of countries have these generic ones. And some countries, like I said, have specialized ones we'll go over later. The more important thing to go over on this button, right here, this government reforms button, is this button, expand administration. And a lot of people don't realize that this one's here or what it's doing. Every time you press this button, it's giving you plus 20 to your governing capacity. The downside is it costs more every time. So every time I click this button, like right now it says spend 84, next time it'll say spend 86 or 88. And every time I click it, it'll give me 20 governing capacity, and it'll keep getting more and more expensive. I wouldn't recommend doing that until you've finished all your tiers. So depending on what government you are, you may have more or less tiers. Like if you're a republic, I believe you have 10 tiers. So I would recommend doing all those, and then after that, you still continue to gain points towards this every month. Like even though you're finished, don't go, well, I don't need to come back here. You should come back here every couple of years. Click on this button, and expand your administration. It's free governing capacity. All you do is, I'll just show you, if I click on this, we'll spend 84, gain 20, and if you look here, now it costs us 88. But then our governing capacity now has gone up by more, and you can see expanded administration down there, plus 340. That means I've pressed this button, 17 times now. And so it's an easy way to get stuff. By the end of the game, that could easily be 1,000, I don't know, maybe not 1,000, but 700, 800 points easily. So that's something to keep in mind. The next thing, let's see, I'm trying to think if there's too many. That's about most of the things, other than a lot of the special modifiers. Oh, I know what other two more things I can think of. So one of them is your estates. All of your estates are going to have one called governing capacity plus 100. It doesn't matter if you've got 3 estates or 2 or whatever you've got for the country you're playing, they will all have this. And you can click on that and get an instant plus 100 to your governing capacity. You do want to make sure you're aware though of the consequences of pressing this button, because there are positives and negatives to giving privileges to your estates. I will put out an estates guide later on if you're not sure, but if you do, just make sure you understand what this is going to do to your nation, because it does have some like 5% crown land, and 5% off on your absolutism can both be pretty big if you weren't expecting it. So you got to make sure you're aware of that. Another thing you can get is if you have it, and this is a DLC, unfortunately. These next two things, I suppose, are DLC. If you have a Great Powers button, which will be right here if you have it, then you can become a hegemon. If you become an economic hegemon, as you can see on the bottom, you get plus 20% to governing capacity. You want to keep that in mind. 20% is a huge amount. Another one is, if you have this button, once again it's a DLC, you have the ages button right here though, you can click on that, and the last age, the Age of Revolutions, if you're Russia, I can't click on it right now, but if you're Russia, one of these buttons gives you plus 33%, so that's something to keep in mind if you're Russia, really helps out. Okay, and now we're just going to switch over to a different map so I can show just a few more things. If we go over here, we're Great Britain at the moment, and look at their ideas, we can see that they actually get something called Acts of Union. It gives them plus 10% to their governing capacity. That's a unique British idea. And if we go over here and look, you can see now we have all the normal base values, and we're also getting Acts of Union plus 10% and fully administered plus 25%. And that comes from, since we haven't talked about it yet, the administrative ideas. If you finish that, you get plus 25% to your governing capacity. That's a really nice one to take if you're planning to expand a lot. Let's switch over real quick over to the Ottomans. If we look at them, they have a special government reform called Ottoman government. They start with, it gives them a flat plus 150 governing capacity. So if we look at them real quick, we can see they get plus 150 as a flat modifier. So as usual, the game will add all the flat modifiers up and then multiply it by any modifiers you have, like they have fully administrative also, so they'll get that bonus. And the last one I want to show off is the Prussians. And the Prussians are unique because, so let's say you're playing Teutonic Order and you convert to the Prussians, you might be wondering, oh man, my governing capacity just plummeted. Well, the reason behind that is the Prussians have a unique government, one called Prussian monarchy, that gives them a minus 50% to governing capacity, so it's actually a penalty. So if we go over here and look real quick, we can see that if we added their flat modifiers, normally they'd be at 1100. Instead, they're only getting 550, so that's something to keep in mind if you switch to Prussia. And these are just 3 examples. There's a lot of these in the game. You're just going to have to keep an eye out for them to see if you see them. A lot of times they are special government types or ideas for different countries, so you just have to keep an eye out for them. If you want a complete list, you could probably go look it up on the EU4 Wikipedia. But I hope that helped you out there. If you guys have any thoughts or questions about the guide, or if you think I missed something, let me know down below. And I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope to see you next time for more guides. Thanks for watching.